Tell us what message it is you are taking on your European tour.
Well, it's good to be back on Bloomberg. I've been quite clear since I've been the mayor that we are a global city. We've always been a global city, and the key message I'm taking and I've brought to Berlin, and I'll be meeting the finance minister, meeting the mayor of Berlin, and as importantly, meeting German businesses, is that London is open. London is open to trade, to talent, to investment, to business. Even if it is the case that we leave the European Union, that's not going to change. Our underlying strengths will stay there. The access to a fantastic talent pool, our ecosystem where you've got in London not just finance but tech and culture and life sciences and the world's best universities. And it's really important that I give that reassurance to German businesses, from Bosch to BMW, from the banks who do so much business in London. And that reassurance is important. Clearly, my view is that the deal Prime Minister May is currently negotiating with the European Union is at the very best a bad Brexit deal, and the worst is we could be in a situation where there is no deal whatsoever. And in those circumstances, what I say to the Prime Minister is that she should give the public a vote for the first time on whether they accept those outcome of negotiations with the option of staying in the EU.
The number 10 has, of course, ruled out any kind of other referendum on Brexit. Looking at where this goes next then, Sadiq, how will Labour MPs, do you think, vote on Theresa May's plan if she achieves one, if she brings something back from Brussels? How do you think Labour MPs will vote? Will they vote for her plan, or will they vote for no deal?
Well, the Labour Party's position nationally is we've set out 6 tests which we think a deal that the Prime Minister negotiates with the EU should satisfy. And they include things like having similar outcomes to access to the single market, a similar relationship with the EU as being a member of the customs union, making sure there's not a race to the bottom, making sure we have protection of workers' rights, and on. There are 6 tests we've set out. It's quite clear that any deal Prime Minister May is negotiating is a million miles away from not just those 6 tests, but what was originally promised in the referendum campaign. So if Prime Minister May manages to get a deal with the EU, manages to persuade her cabinet to accept that deal, manages then to persuade her party to accept that deal, it goes to Parliament. And my message to MPs of all parties, and not just Labour MPs, is to ask yourself what's good for our country, what will make life easier for yourself, your children and grandchildren if you're a constituent, but also to realise if you think this deal should be rejected, reject the deal. If we can't have a general election, let the public have a say in whether they accept this deal with the option of staying in the EU. But the upshot of what you suggested there, voting against the deal, might be a no-deal Brexit. Is that something that Labour MPs should be prepared to vote for? This is a really important point. Your viewers may not realise, but what we've got to make sure when the vote gets to Parliament is that any motion the government puts down is able to be amended by Parliament. The idea of us taking back control, inverted commas, didn't mean the executive has all the cards and Parliament has no cards. So the discussion taking place in Parliament now is whether it'll be possible to amend the motion. It can't be take it or leave it. It's got to be take the deal we've negotiated, or let the public have a say on whether they want to stay in the EU. The worst of all worlds is no deal, which would be catastrophic. And I'm sure even Prime Minister May wouldn't be that reckless in the interest of a party, Trump in the interest of the country. It's really important that Speaker Bercow allows MPs the opportunity to amend the motion. So even if the motion is amendable, though, Sadiq, will there be time to send Prime Minister May back to Brussels to do a different deal? Well, I met with Michel Barnier 10, 12 days ago, and the point I made to Michel Barnier, who is negotiating on behalf of the European Union, is I asked him to start preparing now for the possibility of extending Article 50. You'll be aware that Prime Minister May, in my view, negligently served notice to quit the Article 50, which means the stop clock is ticking. We've got 2 years, 11 p.m. March 29th to secure the deal. What I said to Michel Barnier is I think the EU should be doing work now on the extension of Article 50. All the experts that we've spoken to, including the drafter of Article 50, Lord Kerr, say it is possible to extend Article 50. If it's the case that the EU doesn't want a hard Brexit, bad for London, bad for the UK, bad for the EU, I'm hoping that the EU accepts the extension of Article 50. Did Michel Barnier give you any indication that an extension of Article 50 was possible, Sadiq? Well, not unreasonably, he's going to keep his cards close to his chest, but he understands the point. If there's a possibility of, for example, the British public having another say on the EU, with the option of staying in the EU, of course, the British public may decide to accept the deal negotiated by Prime Minister May. Bearing in mind the consequences of no deal on the EU, also my country and my city, I'm sure the EU would realise it's far preferable to extend Article 50, which is possible to do, rather than having a situation where there is no deal with all the consequences that flow. The consequences that flow include, at 11 p.m. on March 29th, financial passporting going, EU clearing, being unclear what happens with EU clearing, unclear what happens to those Europeans, more than 3.5 million in my country, a million of whom are in London, and on. So I'm sure, Michel Barnier, his team, but also the British government would realise, if it is the case that the British Parliament rejects the deal negotiated by Prime Minister May, amends the motion so it allows the British public a first say on the outcome of negotiations, then the sensible thing to do is extend Article 50 to have more time for us to see the outcome of that vote with the British public.